Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, as you see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Well, I'm going to absolutely boot up some Umami on my phone and play it because I've realised I've not done a daily run today. I'm on the phase where I'm trying to train the aces for CM, and I'm unbelievably lucky, say in Skyrun. Like, I got her up to S-Mile, I inherited groundwork actually from the things, which is, you know, enough to constitute lucky, and I only got to 1,000 speed, and I was like, that probably is not enough for a mile race. I think it is, but she's got also like 1,000 power. She's got 1,000 speed, 1,000 power, 500-ish guts. That's not bad. Hello everyone. Right now, Fawnhallow, it's 12:23 PM on Sunday, September 28, 2025. Sorry, my nose has got like a little block there. And she's got an insane amount of skills. The only thing I'd probably say is she also does have 3 green skills. She actually has 4 green skills. That's how many she has. The only thing is, probably, is because I know that you get 601-ish. If you get 601 stamina, you get a bonus speed. I think I probably focused a bit too much on stamina when I should have been focusing more on actually getting the speed first. And then, if I had spare time, get the stamina and guts and other stats up to 301. But I didn't, because I didn't think it through. But that was also the first run I did. So, I don't know if I'm ever going to get anything that lucky again. Anyway, if you can tell by today's title, I'm going to be talking about Stephen King's Long Walk, because we watched a movie yesterday. I'm going to warn you now, I think this will be basically spoilers straight off the bat, because it's quite hard to talk about this movie without talking about the events which happened in it. I would also warn you, my TLDR summary, I suppose, is I liked the movie a lot. I don't think it's necessarily a movie for anyone or everyone. If you are squeamish, do not watch this movie. This movie is very graphic, I suppose, with its gore. Does not hold back, and it's a really, really bleak movie to watch. Like, watching it just makes you just go, oh. And just, it might ruin your day, I suppose, depending on the sort of day you watch on. So just be careful. Just be careful is what I'm saying. Anyway, apart from that, I would also say this probably would not be an appropriate Animal Crossing episode. Like, I'm not going to go into like gory details, hopefully, or anything. I'm going to do my best to sort of talk sort of vaguely about it. But this movie is, you know, 15 plus for a reason. And yeah, what else am I going to say about it? So yeah, all bets are off spoiler-wise, but I'll give you the synopsis at least first. That The Long Walk is basically a dystopian, I think, thriller. Like, it doesn't strike the same chords as I think it would do for horror. I guess it definitely has a horror feel to it, but like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't say it and be like, oh, you know, it feels like a Hereditary sort of horror. Like, it's a very much dystopian Greek thriller horror sort of thing. Does that distinction make any difference? Who knows? Who cares? But it's an extraordinarily bleak, just upsetting movie, I would say, to watch. Like, watching it just kind of makes you feel sad, if anything. But essentially, it's set in some sort of dystopian future with some very sort of controlling, authoritative regime, where 50 boys sign up to partake in essentially what is a death game, where they have to walk, and it's last man standing, and they have to basically constantly walk at 3 miles an hour or above, and if they fall below 3 miles an hour for too long, they die. Which is spooky. Very, very scary, I would say, and obviously not something anyone wants to be subject to, which is why it's a dystopian thriller. But it, as a synopsis, and I suppose all bets are off now, spoiler-wise, its premise doesn't sound like it would be that intriguing, you know? Like, because it basically sounds like, as my friend described it, is it basically like a vlog of these young adult men walking? That's basically what the entire movie is. I think that's underselling it, to be fair, but also, to be fair, if that premise sounds boring to you, or like doesn't seem like it would interest you because maybe you like more action things, you more like more dynamic scenes or something like that, don't watch this movie. You're not going to enjoy this movie. You're just going to get extremely grossed out by it, probably. What I think, or what I liked about it, is it felt like it's very well, it is, full stop, very character focused. A lot of it is about the interactions between the boys. You see them all coming from sort of different walks, pardon my pun, of life and their interactions with each other, and there's something very humanizing about the way they act with each other in like a sort of jokey, boys will be boys and not in a toxic way. In their interactions between each other, they sort of joke around. You see like we sort of clique swarm, you can see the insecurities and struggles of them like sort of portray themselves and how they interact with each other. It's really charming to see like this the four main-ish sort of characters make up like the four musketeers or something, and despite them having rather different personalities and sometimes it comes to a clash here and there, they still all support each other in what is essentially a death game where only one of them can win. It's heartwarming to say the least, and it starts out quite heartwarming to see them all, like basically having a sort of good jolly time until, the first death comes in, and then you're like, whoa, okay, that like woke me up like big time. And from then on, it just becomes brutal, where I would basically describe the entire movie as you spent the first like 20 minutes getting introduced to like the main core of the characters, the like outer fringe side characters, and then everyone else is a background character, and you learn a bit about them through their interactions and the way they convey themselves. But by the way, I would say a lot of this movie, I think, is really heavily carried by the phenomenal acting from the actors. The person who plays Petey, is that his name? Peter? I can't remember his name. Was phenomenal, in my opinion. But yeah, there's just a lot of really good acting, just in general, in this movie, which I think really carries it, because, I mean, as I said, it's very sort of dialogue, character focused. If they didn't, then what else are they going to do? It's not like this movie has, like, action scenes to really sort of carry any other part of it. But yeah, I mean, I liked it a lot because I like to see the interaction of the characters. I like to see exactly how they sort of approach a situation, and of course, in my usual sort of way, I like to wonder, I wonder what this movie is like trying to tell us about XYZ or something. And actually, I'll be honest, and after watching the movie, my analytical side, didn't really come to a conclusion. I was like, maybe it's like trying to be some sort of commentary on a dystopian future, where it's about like class divide and about like running this sort of rat race of life, and like how different people approach it through different ways, and the different things which sort of before them. But I was like, I'm not in love with that like explanation. It doesn't feel like it entirely fits like some of the characters. Like it fits some like pretty well, but then others it's just like doesn't really make sense to me. But I read afterwards, and I agree with this one more, is that people were just like, oh, it's more of like an allegory for war time. And I was like, that makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. It's about like, these bright-eyed, like young men being signed up and being promised like riches, fames, glory for their country and that sort of thing, and then showing with the cruel, true brutality of the actual situation. Apparently it was inspired by the Vietnam War, and I guess, that makes sense. But yeah, it really, really is like a disheartening movie to watch. I like seeing all the different characters. Basically, they all come in and then they all perish, unfortunately, in the ways. And it's basically, as I say, the movie is basically you watching them sign off every single time. You like... I need to sneeze. You see the characters come in and then they meet an absolutely brutal, horrific end, which makes you just go, ugh. Stomach churning. Like, I guess we could talk about each of the characters more in turn now, but like Curly being like a very young character at the beginning, and you're just sort of like, people make fun of him for being young when he's here. But it's weird because like I go in, like I know exactly what's going to happen. I know exactly what their fate is going to be. But it's still brutal to know exactly what basically ends up happening for them. And how much camaraderie and stuff they have for each other as they're going through. They're like still supporting each other, one of them like gives food to the other still just to make sure that he has something to eat, despite the fact that it's a competition, only one can survive and the others need to die for it to do so. They still very much are like, here you go, we'll help each other out. A very positive masculinity, some might say. But yeah, Curly comes in, he's like and he's the first one to die, and it's absolutely brutal just watching. Like, I think what makes the death so impactful is how well it's acted through this, like, absolutely gut-wrenching sort of screams of just being like, you know, it's not fair, and it's like, it's sort of stomach-churning. The one that really sticks with me is Olsen's death, where he's basically screaming at the end. He basically sort of like tries to turn around, he wants to sort of like, what's the word, fight back against the system in some ways, but as he sort of dies, you know, he's like made an example of. They leave him sort of bleeding on the ground, and he's just screaming out like, I did it all wrong, and which I interpreted at the time to be like, oh, he's talking about like he lived his whole life wrong, you know, to get to his point, and then upon the discovery that he also has like a spouse, really explains that to me. Like, it's sort of just like that's why he's getting it out. He did it all wrong because he regrets going on to this show to do this. And it's absolutely gut-wrenching to hear him just scream that out within his like last breaths of life, you know. So where am I going with this? I'm not really sure, to be honest. It's just an absolutely brutal movie, you know, to watch. I don't know if I have any sort of like grand other points to make about it, except for you should just watch it. If you're squeamish, again, don't watch it because it's horrifically graphic. There is a moment, I suppose, if you want spoilers about what happens, there's a moment where one of the boys, you know, you see them sort of get worn down. To be fair, probably not to the extent that they should be worn down, but, you know, Hollywood worn down. You see a lot of like from blood soaking through like their clothes and things like that. There's a moment where you see a shot. He's one of like the background characters. Like, we no idea what his name is. You see like the blood coming through his socks, and he just can't take it anymore, and he goes up to the army officer and is like, please help me, or something like that, and he like tries to climb on top of a tank, and then they push him off, and then he gets run over essentially by the tank, and it's absolutely horrific, because he doesn't die immediately, and you just hear his screams, and it's like, ugh. Like I went with a friend who also watches like a decent amount of like horror and stuff, and he loves like slasher horror movies. The cheesier the better. And he was like, you know, that made me feel squeamish, you know, watching it. And I was like, that's completely fair. It genuinely is just so brutal. But yeah. It's just, I don't know what else to say. Like, I really like Pete's character, you know, to me there seemed like there was some sort of like gay undertones from what he said, especially the part where, you know, Ray asked him like, oh, do you have like a girl back home as well? And he was like, no, Ray, I don't, in like a very sort of matter-of-factly sort of way. They say I love you at the end, and it's all very heartbreaking. I mean, there's something to be said about I'm not sure melancholy is the right word, but the tragicness of watching a movie where you know how it ends, a movie where it's like, you know it's not going to end well for them, you know everyone's going to die at the end, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's what ends up making it feel so, well, brutal, I would say. But yeah. What else can I say about it? Barkovich's character I thought was really interesting. To see him basically be like, no, you know, I'm not a killer. Please don't say that about me. You know, he was basically, it's all like, even the characters who were evil, there's still like some sense of camaraderie. You can see like the insecurities and where they come from. In his case, it was like he just wants a way of fitting in. Like, it's demonstrated really clearly at the beginning where he makes a joke and no one laughs, and he just goes, oh, okay, essentially. He just wants to fit in, but he doesn't know how to. Then he finds he gets like attention, I suppose, by basically insulting and ribbing and picking on other people, and it ends up resulting in the death of one of the other characters, and then he just is basically torn up for it for the entire day. He feels completely ostracized, for fair enough reason, I suppose, by the fact that, you know, he basically taunted someone to their death, which is not in the spirit of camaraderie. It's just, I don't know, it's just brutal. The more I think about it, I'm just like, the more brutal it is just thinking about the moments. But I'm trying to think of other, like, really interesting moments. Stebbins had, like, a very interesting sort of speech at the end about being a mechanical rabbit, which, I was like, in a moment, I was like, this is a good speech. I don't understand why this character is necessarily saying it. But he had a big twist at the end. But apparently I read in the book, that speech is given to a different character. They like condense some of the characters down into one, like Olsen and the different characters condensed into one, like when the Native American characters condensed into one or something, who was initially two. And there's the mechanical rabbit speech comes from a character who basically says nothing, just walks at the front the entire time and leads the way. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. That makes more sense to me. But it's still like a very impactful speech, I would say. One that made me go, whoa. And you get little snippets, I suppose, of what happens, I suppose, in this world. Because that's one thing I would say is almost to its detriment. Because it's sort of like it wants you to suspend your disbelief, I suppose, of what's going on, right? And be like, oh yeah, you know, how did this thing come about? And you're just sort of like, you don't know, it just sort of goes about. I'm trying to think how to put it. I think it's more like, because it gives so little context behind exactly what's going on, it makes it difficult, I think, to almost buy into. Does that make sense? Like, it's sort of like the entire premise feels entirely strange. Like, it works as a metaphor, in my opinion, as a metaphor for war or anything like that. But if you think of it like in the context of a thing, it's like, how did it come to this situation? And you're sort of like, I'm not exactly sure, you know, all things considered. I'm not sure what series of events would or could even lead to this situation in the first place. Like, not that it's contrived, I suppose, in necessarily a bad way, but it's like contrived in a way where you're like, how does this work? Like, or why does this happen? Or like, why do they even kill them, I suppose, at the end? If they lose, I don't know, because it's meant to be a thing which they say is like, it motivates a country, you know, if productivity goes up. But I was like, I feel like if I watched something that disheartening on TV, would productivity go up, or would I be like, this just feels bad, you know? I don't know. No, I do know. I don't know why I said I don't know. I definitely would know. That would feel bad. I'd be like, I don't want to watch people just die in a death game on TV, but, you know, it's a dystopian future. Who knows how it even comes about in the first place? So I'm basically just trying to say, I think maybe you don't need to think too much about necessarily the technical details of what's going on, because maybe it doesn't matter so much, you know? Like, even, it was written in 1967, I didn't realise it's that old, but I think it's more just about the premise. It's more about basically exploring the premise and how horrifying it would be, rather than where this premise takes place in the world. It's vaguely dystopian futures, vaguely they have this sort of totalitarian regime controlling everything, and it's a sort of, you know, that part's a vague commentary, I suppose. Not vague, I mean, it's like a commentary, I suppose, on divide and, you know, control and rebellion and that sort of thing. But I think it's more just, it does very well with exploring a rather grounded horror thing. You know, like, wouldn't it be messed up if you just had to march until you died? Yeah, it would be, Stephen King, and it's horrifying when put into movie form. So I would say, like, overall, I would give it like 7 or 8-ish. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it a lot. It's not a movie I think I would watch again, mainly because it's just horrific, to be honest, to watch. Like, the credit where credit is due, I suppose, for not cutting away at those gruesome moments to really make them sink in. Doesn't make it very enjoyable to watch, I suppose. It's not like I really want to see someone's horrific, gruesome death, I suppose, you know. But I can't say it didn't leave an impact, I suppose, in that way. How my friends' reviews, just to give a sort of my more overall thing. One of my friends really didn't like it. Found it overall pointless, and I think I understand where he's coming from. That he was like, Hunger Games is a lot better, and I think that totally just depends on what you're looking for in a dystopian thing. We were also like, this movie is like the least you movie ever. That's probably not true, but like, definitely not something that would appeal to his tastes. One of my other friends, he liked it, but also he was like, this just made me feel incredibly squeamish, and I was like, that's totally fair. Like, I also felt it as well. Although I didn't feel it as much with the deaths, despite as horrifying. I felt it a lot more when I didn't expect it to be such a graphic depiction of someone having diarrhea, and I was like, ugh, that just grossed me out, like, entirely. I think it's probably because it feels like it's more relatable to something which I can conceive. Well, a gruesome death is a lot harder for me to conceive. It almost feels like fake in a way. Not that it is. I'm not trying to undermine it, but it's more like, because it's not something I've ever experienced, you know. It feels so disconnected. My other friend, I don't think I actually remember what my other friend said. I think he probably found it all right, is my guess. But yeah, on the whole, I liked it. Would I recommend it for everyone? I think, you know, you can watch a trailer. The trailer is basically what it is conceptualized, fully. So if you watch a trailer and I want to watch more, watch it. If you watch it and was like, is that it? Don't watch it. You're not going to like it. And also don't watch it if you don't like gory things. It's really, really, it's surprisingly gory, I would say. Of course, now I'm saying that, you're imagining like the worst, most gory thing possible, which it's not to that level, I suppose. It's not like complete torture or anything, but it is like horrific. Anyway, that's all I had to say about that. Long walk. I am tempted to read a book now, to be honest. But I think maybe the movie's enough of experience. So, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewells. Until next time. Bye-bye for now.